This is just a simple quick guide to the basics if you're a new owner of a Nissan e-NV electric van. So firstly, the keys are wireless, so you can use the buttons to unlock and lock the vehicle, but you don't need to, so you can just keep the key in your pocket, and then you can push the button on the door. So here's a little rubber button here on the door handle, one on the passenger door as well, and then there's also one here on the back doors. So when you want to lock it, you can get out, push that button, and the van will lock, and when you come up to it, you can push the button and then get in like that. So you can just keep these in your pocket. The other button is a fan symbol there that allows you to turn the heating on remotely, and then you can get that preconditioning, so the vehicle will warm up before you start your journey, and typically it's plugged into the charger as well, and then that helps you to keep maximum range. So starting the e-NV200, firstly you would have your keys in your pocket, so the keys are detected by the vehicle whether they're inside or outside the vehicle. So when you're inside, all you've got to do is put your foot on the brake. You must always keep your foot on the brake, and push the starter button, and then the van will boot up as it's just doing. The biggest tip I can give you is you just need to slow down with your starting procedure. Don't push the button and then go to put it into gear too quickly. You need to give this a good 2 seconds to boot up. If you do it any quicker, it won't engage drive, and it will end up taking you longer putting it back to park and starting the procedure again. So you just have to be a little bit slower with electric vehicles. Push the button, let it boot up, just wait 2 seconds and then put it into drive. So keeping your foot on the brake, you can just go down here to drive and release the handbrake and you're off. So the dash, speed up there obviously. This is your fuel tank, which is your battery pack. You've got a little symbol there of what looks like a petrol pump, but it's a charger. This is your estimated range. It's currently showing here at 78 miles. You've got to take that with a big pinch of salt, because it's we call them a guessometer. It's estimating a range based on recent driving. So if you do a blast down a dual carriageway, for example, on your way home, it's going to assume you're going to drive like that the next day. So the electric vehicles can't predict how you're going to drive. They can only base it on recent driving. And also, if the vehicle's stood still for a long time, typically when the vehicle is sold to a new owner, this can artificially be low, and it's going to take a few full tanks of driving, discharging, charging before this range meter starts getting a bit more accurate. And then here we have an eco symbol. You have a eco switch on the van. It's up here on the dash. So if I take eco off, you'll see the range, the estimated range has dropped by 4 miles. The eco switch dulls the power to the motor. Because it dulls the power a little bit, gives you a little bit less power, and it effectively increases your range a little bit. For normal driving, it's perfectly fine to drive in eco mode. For certainly sort of town driving, you do not notice a difference at all. You'll only notice a difference when you're on a motorway. Also, on most electric vehicles, when you've got it in eco mode, it also dulls the air conditioning system, the heating, because the heating system does draw energy from the traction battery, and it just reduces the effectiveness of your heating a little bit. So when it's particularly cold, if you find the vehicle's not warming up enough, take it out of eco and you might find that heating starts working a bit better. And then jumping back over here, this is your gear selector. So as you move your gears, well, the camera's come on now, but if I put it into D, you'll see it's D is shown there, and I'll put it into braking mode and we have a B. And then up here is your charge times. This one is a plus model, so it's got the upgraded 6.6 kilowatt charger. So when you've got the upgraded charger, you see 2 charge times, 3 kilowatt and 6 kilowatt. So as you know, this battery is fully charged, so it's showing no charge times. But as soon as you start using some battery, it gives you a prediction of how long it's going to take to charge to get back to 100%. If you just see 1 charge time with no figures there, that's because it's the standard 3 kilowatt charger in the car. You can change what's on that screen by using these buttons down here, and the top left button scrolls through the various options. So the most important one you're going to want to see really is your average economy, currently there it's showing 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. So economy on electric vehicles is measured in miles per kilowatt hour of electricity rather than miles per gallon. So this vehicle has got a 24 kilowatt hour battery, so it's showing us if we're doing that all the time, 3.4, you just times 3.4 by 24 to get the effective range. And obviously we buy our energy, our electricity, in kilowatt hours as well. And then just scrolling through here, there we can see the battery is at 100%. It's basically replicating that one there. And then battery temperature, and then battery capacity. That's your state of health for the battery. So in this case it's still showing all the bars. I think that's 12 bars without counting them. It's certainly 12 on the Nissan Leaf. I think they've replicated the same here. But as the battery ages, you'll find you'll start losing a bar or two. So your heating controls are here. The heating is the only other thing that draws power from the traction battery under the floor. Everything else, your lights, your wipers, your stereo, all draw power from the 12-watt battery up front, so it doesn't affect range, but your heating does. So you want to keep your heating to a minimum if you can. If you've got it fitted, using your heated seats and heated steering wheel makes a huge difference. So it's far more efficient to heat your contact points, and generally it works. You can stay warm just by having the heated steering wheel and the heated seat on, and then maybe you don't need the heating on at all, or certainly at a much lower temperature. And then what else can I show you? Down here we've got a button that turns off the audible pedestrian system. So out the front of the van is a speaker that plays a tone. It's a not particularly nice tone on the Nissans. It's sort of like an electric whine noise it makes, but about 20 miles an hour that turns off anyway, because by then the tyres are making enough noise and pedestrians and cyclists can hear you anyway. But at lower speeds it plays that tone, but you can turn it off by pushing that button and you'll get a light on the dash. It's particularly useful if you're sort of coming home late at night and you want to creep into the driveway or something. You can turn the noise off, but it always defaults to on, so when you turn the engine on, turn the motor on the next time, it will default to on anyway. And then down here we've got a button to turn the charge timer off if you set a charge timer. Electric mirrors, headlight adjustment, so if you've got load in the back you can adjust the headlight angle down. And a few audible controls and telephone controls on the steering wheel. And that's about it really. The next thing I'll just mention is the gear stick. So obviously reverse, neutral and drive, and then you have a B mode, and the B mode you just toggle across, and that's in B mode, and now that's back to drive. So the B mode increases your regen braking. So effectively with an electric car you want to drive like you got no brakes. You want to predict the road ahead better, and if you're coming up to a junction or a roundabout you want to lift off the accelerator and coast as much as you can, because while you're coasting you're getting energy put back in the battery. That's actually showed on this dial, this part of the display up here, which I should have shown you actually. So as you're using energy you'll get dots coming along here, and as you're regenning and you're putting energy back in the battery it will go back this way. And you want to maximize that because that increases your range. So as you're coming up to a junction or roundabout, lift off the accelerator and coast, and while you're getting that engine braking it's slowing the van down and you're charging the battery. As soon as you touch the brakes you've thrown away that kinetic energy you had that you could have used to charge the battery, and you've thrown it away into friction and heat in the brakes. So what you can do is if you feel like you need to go to the brakes you can push it across to B mode and you get extra regen braking, and that slows the van down quicker. And then of course if you still aren't slowing down enough or you've got to do an emergency stop, of course you slam on the brakes. But if you can just drive a little bit more gently and just read the road ahead better and just let it coast as much as you can, you will get much better range from the vehicle. Another thing to note is when the battery is full, your regen braking is tamed right down. That is because there's nowhere for the energy to go because the battery is already full. So it might catch you out when you're not used to it. So when the battery is full, you might go up to your first junction or roundabout, lift off the accelerator, expect the van to slow down at its normal rate, and it doesn't. It almost sort of races forward. You will have to use your foot brake when the battery is full until that battery has lost a bar off the meter up here. Then you really don't get much regen at all. Even if you put it into B mode you will find that it's still not braking as you'd expect until you've lost a bar off the battery. So using these buttons here, there's a few more settings you've got up there on the screen. So if I push this button, the top left, you can scroll round until you get to settings. I just missed it. Let's go round again and then go down to detail. You want to use the dot button at the top right, go down to detail and then use the top left button again to select it. And then here we've got a few options. So charge percentage allows you to restrict your battery to only charge to 80%. That is not particularly helpful on a small battery like a 24 kilowatt van, but if you had a 40 you may use that a bit more. So if you really want to be careful with your battery and really look after it well, then you can limit its charging so it only charges to 80% rather than 100%. But to be honest, with a small battery that does restrict your range a little bit more, so most people will just charge at 100%, and there's a lot of evidence that it doesn't make a huge difference anyway. Here we've also got a charging timer, so that's useful if you've got a cheap rate in electricity tariff. So you've got economy 7 or one of these new timed electricity tariffs like Octopus EV, where you can get a cheap rate period, typically from midnight till about 4 AM. Then you can set the van to only charge during those times, and then your charging rate is obviously an awful lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper to run the vehicle if you can charge on cheap rate electricity, obviously. And then next is your climate timer. So that's where you can set a timer for the climate control to come on, for the air conditioning to come on. So if you're going to work every day at the same time in the morning, you will tell the vehicle what time you want it to warm up, and then while it's connected to your charger, the climate control system will come on and it will warm the cab up and it will melt the ice off the windows, and then you've still got 100% range, 100% battery when you get in, because it's all been done while the van's connected to your charger. And in the winter it will heat, and in the summer it will cool. So it's a very useful feature, and it's a nice trick to retain range, because then the van's hot, so you can do your journey without any heating on at all. It makes a huge difference. And then when you want to stop the vehicle, when you finish doing your driving, you've always got to put it into park. You must keep your foot on the brake when you move this selector up to park or reverse. Put it into park and simply just push the button, and then it all switches off. Next thing is charging. The charging flap button is actually down here under the dash. A little bit awkward, but there's two levers. One's to open the bonnet, one is to open the charge flap, and it's got a blue charging symbol on there. Pull that down and then your charge flap at the front opens, and you have got two charge ports. So this is your AC charge port. This is what you would use at home or on a public charging post, typically 7 kilowatt charging posts. And this is your DC charging port. So this is your 50 kilowatt CHAdeMO DC connector. So this is your rapid charging. So you find those chargers on the motorway network and now popping up in other locations as well. So when you're charging on the CHAdeMO connector, the cable comes on the charger and the port, obviously, so because the cables are sort of this thick, they're huge. And that's when you're charging on DC, and you'll get a charge from 0 to 80% in about 25 minutes, 30 minutes or so on one of these. When you're charging on AC, you don't get cables on the chargers, so you just get a socket. So that's where you need to keep the cable that comes with the vehicle in the vehicle, plug in here and plug into the charger. So here's your charge cables. This is your type 1 to type 2 charge cable you would use at home on a home wall charger, or you keep this in the van and you use this on public charging posts. So all charging sockets are type 2 like this. So this is the end you plug into the charger, and on these vans it's type 1 on the van. So this is your type 1 socket that goes in the front of the van. It's usually best to plug this into the charger first and effectively make it live before you plug it into the van, but it's not actually live. There's no electricity, no high voltage electricity coming to these pins once you plug it in, because there's low voltage sense pins here, and the van has to communicate with the charger before it turns the electricity on. So what that means is if you were to drop this in a puddle on your way to the van, you're not going to electrocute yourself. But because the van communicates with the charger as soon as you plug it in, it's best to sort the charger out first. Plug your cable in, sort your app or payment out, get it going, and then snap it into the charging socket at the front of the van last. And then over here is a portable charger. These are often called a granny cable. So this allows you to charge the van on a normal 3-pin socket. Again, plug that in, switch it on, you'll get the ready light go on, and then go up and push this into the van. So these can only draw 10 amp, so they do take longer to charge, but on a 24 kilowatt hour battery it'll always be charged by the morning. But these are very handy if you're out at work during the day and you're on site. You can charge your van anywhere where you've got a 240 volt socket, so it's worth keeping this in the van as well. It's a great backup, and obviously you always want to keep that cable in the van so you can use a public charging port. As with all vehicles, you want to keep your tyres at the correct pressure. Obviously if they get soft it is dangerous, but you will also lose range with soft tyres, so check them regularly. And the tyre pressures are on a sticker here inside the door.